Mr. Summit? Oh, you reserved your right.
Well, this is two sides to the story, there's no doubt about that, and Councillor Rose is related one, and it's a strong case too. On the other hand, there's a lot of, I would regard, very respected agricultural producers in Hawke's Bay that are strongly against GMOs. At the seminar last year, I think someone summed it up very well, or I thought he did anyway, when he said simply, GMOs might be good for feeding the planet, but they're not necessarily good for Hawke's Bay. As far as I'm concerned, this is well in hand, at least through the Hastings District Council plan, and I see no need for us, a compelling case for us to change.
Put the motion in. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. Well, it is, but you can do. No, you are absolutely. You're entitled to ask for a division. So those in favour and against. Actually, the camera, just before we go on to the next item, does make a difference to division, doesn't it? The division does take up some time in our meetings. It is recorded now, but there you go. Okay. Page 18, Governance. Catherine Bayliss and Matt Kirkwood. You happy to move? Seconder for that? I'll second that. You wish to speak?
I will take this final opportunity to talk about governance and particularly in the Maori representation. And I have some difficulty with the staff's comment at 2A. The difficulty of one Māori seat representing all Māori in the region. It's a similar issue that's confronting central government representation as well. And to base an argument on the perceived difficulty of one Māori member is I think a little bit vacuous, for want of a term to use. Given that we've got that scenario in play already. I put a challenge out to the Council in regard to Māori representation because the demographics of the region are such that this issue will become more and more important as Māori become a greater part of the constituency and ultimately will want to take a full participatory role around the table. And I don't think in times to come, it may be 10 years from now, I don't think it's viable to have Māori camped, removed from this table with a full voice. I just don't think ultimately that that's the way to do. And I'm rather tempted to look at ways of advancing greater Māori representation than we have at present. Granted that the Regional Planning Committee provides some impetus for Māori representation, but at the end of the day, Māori will have to be represented around this table at some point in the future. And I just sort of reflect on where we've come in the last perhaps 20 years with both, or even less than that, with the MMP environment. The greater representation is now accepted with a greater number of Māori in the House. In my mind, there is greater security nationwide as a result. And I'm thinking about the fellow from Northland, what's his name? Harawira. His positions on many aspects in that whole environment were very confrontational. And but now we're seeing, because of that representation, a much more moderate approach. And I think it's much better that we consider greater opportunities for Māori around the table than is offered solely by the Māori Committee on its own and by the Regional Planning Committee for the future. I'm perhaps foreshadowing a time in 10 years' time when this will become a much more vital issue for Council.
Just a second, just to follow on from that. Nothing's perfect. in this world. The representation issue is there in front of us. I heard a prominent Māori tell me the other day, well, you've got to start there. We need to do more. The Joint Planning Committee was the reference. No. Yeah, well, a prominent one. But anyway, I'm happy to support this motion as it lies at the moment, acknowledging, however, Wairoa with 61% Māori, we're about to take you over from the north. So just throw that in there. But yeah, I'm happy to support this motion. And we'll ask for those in favour or other speakers.
Should have raised this before. There is still a matter under the agenda paper which we didn't address as to the council remuneration, and that is brought up in this particular submission.
We left it on the table. There was a motion moved and seconded to leave it on the table.
But, Mr Chairman, at some stage a decision has to be made as to whether that accommodation is taken or not.
Could I signal that we...
In which case there would be a change to the plan, and therefore that motion would actually...
Point of clarification.
I'm not sure it'll be ultra vires. That piece is on the table.
Till the next meeting.
No.
Can it be raised again now?
Could be raised again now, but until we have the debate, we're challenged. So my suggestion would be that following the E&S meeting tomorrow, we have a council meeting, or make a council decision at that meeting.
Mr Chairman, just for clarification, could this motion be limited to considerations 1 and 2, with consideration 3 to be responded to following that?
Possibly, but
well, just speaking to that, Mr Chair, I think ultimately, by the time we approve the plan, we will have that resolution in there, and there will be no change to the annual plan. So it's chicken and egg in some sense, and I suggest we're reasonably on safe grounds by indicating, and this is what we're doing now, we're indicating to staff what they should put into the letter, and then making no plan to the change to the annual plan. The annual plan, by the time it's approved, will have that in it.
Happy with that?
Well, Mr Chairman, if you're intending to deal with the matter tomorrow by a decision of council, you require 100% support for whatever the motion is, and that might be difficult to achieve. I don't know.
Might be difficult to achieve today too, Councillor.
Well, yeah, sure.
Without the debate.
No, well, I can't see why we can't have it today. I mean, it's not something for us. It's for the next council. I can see no reason why anyone should be trying to dictate what the form of remuneration is for the next council. That's for it to decide. You just have to make prudent provision.
Agree. So what does that then do to the discussion that is pending tomorrow? Makes it null and void.
As I've seen it, it's then a matter of how and if that money is allocated.
Let's get some clarification here.
I mean, Mr Chairman, the annual plan makes provision for a sum of money. It also actually notes in the annual report your attendance at various meetings and things are recorded. But to my reading there, that submission was suggesting alternative ways of allocating that money. And I think that's a decision that's outside of the annual plan.
Could I move that we put that $30,000 into the annual plan, or was that out of order? No, it's lying on the table.
No, Mr Chairman, you left it on the table, yes. Yeah, part of the internal submission had a recommendation for 30,000.
Can I move? Yes. Yes, I would, if I can, if I'm allowed to, if that's okay.
You haven't spoken, so yes, your amendment is?
My amendment was that the $30,000 be provided in the annual plan for the council remuneration or whatever this. I mean,
Well,
that's what I'm
Mr. Chair.
saying. It's
And no other changes to the annual plan.
yes.
Okay, and you just have a second on the amendments you wish to speak?
Well, Mr. Chairman, it seems pretty straightforward. We make a provision. If it's not required by the next council, it's put back in the budget. If it's required, it's used. It's pretty straightforward. It's an open and shut case. And otherwise, we're going to do the round tomorrow and the next day until the cows come home. So if we can sort it out now, let's do it.
I think it's common sense. I was a bit surprised when we put it on the table. Yes, if there's a determination by an incoming council not to use it, it simply goes back into the general funds anyway. So I can't see that we're compromising ourselves or anybody else. I think it's just a matter of common sense. And
Any other speakers you wish to speak?
Well, Mr. Chairman, maybe we could just leave it for the incoming council and, well, they could come out contingency they wanted. They could say, we want to make a provision, surely.
No.
Why can't they? I mean,
It's the determination from the REM authority. It's pretty explicit. That's the challenge. It's new. It's a new concept.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, the expectation of the Remuneration Authority is that future salaries for positions of responsibility be stated by this council, so as future candidates can then ascertain the payment they would most probably get when they're elected. Yeah.
Okay, we understand that. Any other speakers?
Option to do it seems a common sense thing to do.
Okay. No other speakers?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I mean, what we do is we have lying on the table.
Seem to have got bogged down in process here. This is actually the agenda item under Governance and Community Engagement Project 840, which is the additional 30,000. If that was dealt with as a separate motion and addressed, then the motion in here would be to make the points made and that the remuneration authorities was supported.
why don't we just roll it back?
Yeah. But, Mr. Chairman, what lies on the table and part of the internal submission that you intended to come back to, dealing with that issue. So I would suggest that the recommendation in the internal submission be adopted, which is properly worded for the 30,000 costs associated with council remuneration as set out by the Remuneration Authority.
That's the one I was after.
Yeah.
So you've moved that.
That's that one.
Seconded that. Okay. All those in favour, please say aye. Or you wish to speak?
A point of clarification regards the Māori issue. Is this all rolled up into one?
Next.
Okay, so all those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Now we're back to this motion, which is as it was.
So just as is.
Okay. Any further speakers?
Mike?
Mike, you wish to speak?
Yes, just in terms of the Māori representation, I think as far as the Regional Planning Committee go, that's a huge step forward. And also the Māori Committee, which is on a different level, it was criticised last year that it might be self-serving, but I can assure you that I would be advocating the Māori Committee to carry on, even though I will probably be stepping down myself, so that removes that criticism. It's very difficult for one Māori to represent all Māoridom, because when you go out there to the hui, you get pretty well hammered. And by spreading the load between those two committees, it just gives a wider perspective. And you heard Nikki yesterday, Representative Nikki, Dr. Adele White, coming in with her perspective. This is the current situation is excellent. And I think back before the Regional Planning Committee and those that served on the Māori Committee 15 years or so ago, now well gone, for the promised land, that they would be just blown away if they knew that the opportunity for Māori to have a say in ongoing things and sitting the opposite elected councillors. I would still like to have a bigger piece of the cake and have a Māori representative here, not as a right, but voted in. But as Māori say, there's an old Māori saying, "Hey, well, what's a noivo," which means that's a bit of a dream, but sometimes a dream comes true. So thank you very much for your ongoing support.
Councillor Scott.
I will speak because really this debate is not relevant to the annual plan, and perhaps that was where the submissions raised. There is a process to be gone through with representation, and it actually has to go through the Electoral Commission, and that was open to public submission at the time, and that was the process. It has to be gone because we actually have to put out a proposal to allow the public a chance. So putting something forward through the annual plan is actually totally ultra vires as far as our being able to adopt anything or not adopt. So we have no position to take other than no change because we can't. I also question, though, that we should note that we have adopted in the resolution that we have adopted the Remuneration Authority's recommendation.